No nanny had lasted a week with the triplets, until the black cook did the impossible. Mrs. Helena Whitman watched from the window of her Beverly Hills mansion as yet another nanny ran out the front gate, carrying his bags and sobbing uncontrollably. She was the 17th in 2 years. "Damn kids," she muttered to herself, adjusting the pearls around her neck. "I don't know how my son managed to raise 3 little savages." On the other side of the house, Conception Washington was finishing seasoning the chicken for lunch when she heard the desperate cries of the 4-year-old triplets echoing through the $2 million home. Lucas, Peter, and Sophie were having another one of her famous collective tantrums that had defeated nannies trained at Harvard, Yale, and even a former governess of the British royal family. "We want our mommy. Daddy is bad. Everyone here is bad," Sophie yelled, kicking everything in sight in the living room. Peter had climbed the silk curtains and refused to come down. Lucas, the most sensitive of the 3, cried copiously while hugging a torn teddy bear. Conceição dried her hands on her apron and walked determinedly into the living room. At 52, this black woman from Atlanta knew very well what it was like to deal with difficult children. She had raised 5 nephews on her own after her sister died in an accident. But Helena Whitman didn't know that. To her prejudiced mother-in-law, Conceição was just the cook, hired 3 months ago by his widowed son. "Children," Conceição said firmly, entering the living room where Raphael Whitman was trying unsuccessfully to calm his sons. "You're making so much noise that even the birds outside are scared." The 3 pairs of blue eyes turned to her immediately. There was something in Conceição's voice, a natural authority mixed with genuine affection, that none of the previous nannies had possessed. "Who are you?" Peter asked, still hanging from the curtain. "I'm the person who makes the delicious food that you, his family, eat every day. And now I need your help to save lunch, which is about to burn." Helena appeared at the entrance to the room, witnessing something that left her speechless. The triplets, whose seconds before had been uncontrollable, climbed down from the curtain, stopped screaming, and followed Conceição back to the kitchen like obedient ducklings. "How did she do that?" Raphael muttered, still in shock. Helena frowned. There was something disturbing about that scene. A maid should not have more authority over the children than the qualified nannies she herself had selected. It just wasn't right. In the kitchen, Conceição assigned simple tasks to each child. Lucas was responsible for stirring a pot with a large wooden spoon, Peter washed tomatoes in a small bowl, and Sophie organized spices by color. Within 15 minutes, the triplets were working happily and with concentration. "Aunt Conceição," Sophie said suddenly, "why are you the first person who doesn't yell at us?" The girl's innocent question hit Conceição like a punch in the stomach. 3 4-year-olds had already learned that adults yell at her constantly. What kind of life was that? "Because you're not bad children," her calmly. "You're sad children. And sad children don't need yelling, they need affection." From the hallway, Helena heard every word and felt anger rising in her chest. That maid was indirectly questioning the educational methods he himself had recommended. Worse still, the children were responding positively to the inappropriate methods of a woman with no formal qualifications. That afternoon, as she watched the triplets playing peacefully in the yard under Conceição's supervision, Helena made a silent decision. This situation needed to be corrected quickly. The children were becoming too close to a maid, and that would create serious problems in the future. What Helena didn't know was that Conceição had noticed every disapproving glance, every whispered comment, every subtle attempt to sabotage his relationship with the children. And unlike previous nannies, Conceição Washington was not a woman to give up easily. She had survived racism in the Deep South, raised 5 children on minimum wage, and built a solid reputation in every home where she had worked. Helena Whitman, with all her prejudices and her class arrogance, had no idea who she was messing with. While the children slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, Conceição planned something that would forever change the dynamics of that house. Because sometimes, when privileged people underestimate those who are truly valuable, they discover too late that the best lessons come from those they least expected. If you are enjoying this story of overcoming adversity and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple cook turned a wealthy family's prejudice into the greatest lesson in humility that he had ever received. The next morning, Helena woke up with a clear plan. During breakfast, she discreetly observed how the triplets interacted with Conceição. They called her aunt, smiled when he appeared, and most disturbingly, obeyed her instructions without question. "Conceição," Helena called after Raphael left for work. I need to talk to her. Conceição continued organizing the dishes, but paid attention. Yes, Mrs. Whitman. Yesterday was an exceptional situation. The children need to resume their proper routine. A qualified nanny will arrive this afternoon. I understand. Conceição showed no surprise, but something in his eyes flashed for a second, a spark that Helena couldn't interpret. What the lady of the house didn't know was that Conceição had spent the night awake, not out of nervousness, but planning. During his 28 years working for wealthy families, he had learned to recognize the signs. Helena Whitman was the type who saw people like Conceição as nothing more than replaceable objects. The new nanny, Christine Morrison, arrived punctually at 2 in the afternoon. Blonde, slim, with a British accent and an impressive resume. She had cared for the children of ambassadors, magistrates, and even a family of bankers in London. My method is based on structural discipline, she explained to Helena in the living room. His children who don't learn obedience at age 4 become problematic teenagers at 14. Helena immediately approved. That was quality education. When the triplets came down to meet Christine, the tension was instantaneous. She greeted them with a formal handshake and began to explain the new rules. No shouting, no running around the house, fixed schedules for everything, immediate consequences for disobedience. And where is Aunt Conceição? Sophie asked, looking around the room. The lady from the kitchen has returned to her place, Christine replied coldly. You will obey me now. We don't want to, Peter declared, crossing his arms. It's not a matter of wanting, young man. It's a matter of having to. Lucas began to cry softly. Sophie held her brother's hand. Peter kept his defiant gaze fixed on the nanny. From the hallway, Conceição heard every word. There was something in the way Christine spoke that awakened a painful memory. Years ago, in another house, she had witnessed an English nanny systematically humiliating an adopted black child, calling her bad-tempered, when in fact the girl just missed her biological family. Conceição had been fired at the time for interfering in matters that were not her business, when she tried to defend the child. The memory still burned. That afternoon, Christine implemented her military routine. The triplets were forced to sit quietly for 2 hours doing educational activities, basically coloring within the lines of predetermined drawings. No creativity, no talking, no movement. At 5 in the afternoon, when Raphael arrived home from work, he found his children sitting on the couch like 3 sad statues. They were clean, organized, and completely lifeless. How was your day? He asked, forcing a smile. Good, Daddy, Sophie replied monotonously. Very educational, Peter added in the same robotic tone. The new nanny is different, Lucas muttered. Raphael frowned. Where were the lively stories, the experiments, the excitement that used to greet him when he came home from work? Where's Conceição? In the kitchen, Christine replied, appearing in the hall. Mr. Whitman, I have implemented a structured routine as we discussed. The children have responded very well to the appropriate discipline. Responded well? Those children looked like zombies. During dinner, the silence was deafening. The triplets ate without talking, without laughing, without asking the curious questions they usually asked. Conceição served the meal and quickly withdrew, but Raphael noticed that she avoided looking directly at the children. Christine, can the children play a little after dinner? Raphael asked. Playtime is from 3 to 4 in the afternoon, Mr. Whitman. Now it's time for quiet activities before bedtime. What kind of activities? Silent reading or educational drawing. Raphael watched his children and noticed something disturbing. In just one day, they had lost all the spontaneity, all the joy that Conceição had awakened in her. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, he looked for Conceição in the kitchen. She was finishing cleaning the last of the dishes, with a different expression on her face. Conceição, is everything okay? Everything is fine, Mr. Raphael. The new nanny seems very competent. There was something in her voice, a polite coldness he had never noticed before. The children were strange today. They were better behaved. That's a good sign. Raphael realized that Conceição was being deliberately distant. As if she had returned to her original role as a maid after weeks of being treated like a member of the family. Conceição, are you upset about something? She stopped drying the plate and looked directly at him. Mr. Raphael, I am the cook. I caused trouble by meddling in matters that are none of my business. Now I will stay in my place. The answer hit Raphael like a slap in the face. Conceição wasn't upset, she was protecting herself. Someone had made it clear to her that taking care of the children was not his job. Who told you that, his? No one needs to say it. We learn to know our place. Raphael felt anger rising in his chest. His place is wherever you want it to be, Conceição. She smiled sadly. You're very good to me, but I know how things work. I've always known. In that simple sentence, Raphael realized that Conceição carried much deeper scars than he had imagined. How many times in her life had she been put in her place? How many times had she been prevented from demonstrating her true abilities? In the days that followed, the routine of the house turned into a silent dictatorship. Christine controlled every movement of the triplets with military precision. Helena approved every decision, constantly praising the return to proper normality. But Conceição watched everything with growing attention. During breaks, she saw the children through the kitchen window, sitting on chairs in the backyard, doing their homework under the scorching sun while Christine read a magazine in the shade. She saw Lucas being scolded for crying when he hurt himself while playing. She saw Sophie being prevented from picking tomatoes from the garden they had planted together. On the third day, something inside Conceição broke for good. Lucas appeared in the kitchen crying softly, with a red mark on his arm. What happened, my love? The nanny said that boys don't cry and squeezed my arm to make me stop. Conceição took a deep breath, trying to control the rage that was growing in his chest. But it was Peter who appeared half an hour later that made her make an irreversible decision. Aunt Conceição, he whispered, the nanny said that you're just a maid and that we can't talk to her about important things anymore because maids don't understand how to raise rich kids. At that moment, Conceição understood that war had been declared. Christine wasn't just taking care of the children, she was deliberately destroying any bond between her and Conceição. Is that so? Conceição asked calmly, drying her hands on her apron. Peter nodded sadly. What Christine Morrison and Helena Whitman didn't know was that they were messing with a woman who had survived things far worse than social prejudice disguised as education. Conceição Washington had raised 5 children on her own, faced systemic racism in Atlanta, and built an impeccable reputation through sheer competence. She wasn't just a cook. She was a born strategist who was about to teach 2 privileged women the difference between social status and real power. While Christine believed she had won the battle and Helena quietly celebrated the return of order, neither of them realized that Conceição had begun to document every abuse, every humiliation, every moment of cruelty she witnessed. What they would soon discover was that a woman who has spent her life being underestimated develops dangerous observation skills and a strategic patience that, when finally revealed, can completely rewrite the balance of power in any situation. During Christine's second week of reign, Conceição did something that none of the other maids in the house had dared to do. She began to record everything. Not obviously, of course. Conceição had learned in life that documenting injustices was a matter of survival. His cell phone, discreetly positioned in the kitchen, captured every scream from Christine in the hallway, every humiliating order, every moment of cruelty disguised as discipline. Lucas, stop crying immediately or you will sit in the punishment chair for 2 hours without moving. The nanny's shrill voice echoed through the kitchen intercom on Tuesday morning. Conceição pressed the record button and continued preparing lunch as if nothing was happening. But inside, her strategy was taking shape. What Helena and Christine didn't know was that Conceição had an unexpected ally, Margaret Thompson, a retired social worker who lived next door. The two had become friends during the afternoons when Conceição took the triplets to play in the backyard. "Honey," Margaret said one afternoon, watching Lucas cry as Christine forced him to sit in the scorching sun for talking without permission. "That's not parenting. That's emotional abuse." Margaret had worked for 30 years protecting vulnerable children. She knew the signs when she saw them. "I know," his wife Conceição replied calmly. "That's why I'm documenting everything." "Are you recording?" "Photos, audio, videos. Everything I can get without he noticing." Margaret smiled admiringly. "Smart woman. You'll need more than that to bring down all that arrogance." "I've thought about that. I need her to reveal herself publicly." That's when Margaret suggested something that would completely change the game. "Conceição, Are you familiar with California's anti-discrimination law? Any employee fired for reasons of race or social class can sue his employer. But he hasn't fired me yet. No, but he's creating a hostile environment to force him out. That's also a crime. Conceição realized she had a powerful legal weapon in her hands. But she would need Helena and Christine to make the next misstep. It didn't take long. On Thursday, Helena organized a dinner party to impress her friends from the social club. 6 ladies from Beverly Hills High Society would come to see the new domestic organization of the house. It was the perfect opportunity to show off Christine and her refined European education. Conceição, Helena called in the morning. I want a flawless dinner tonight. No noise from the children, no mess. Christine will keep the triplets in their room throughout the event. In their room? But he'll get hungry. They'll take sandwiches to eat upstairs. I don't want to see them until the guests leave. Conceição nodded silently, but her mind was already working. Margaret had suggested that she provoke a situation that would reveal Helena's true character in front of respectable witnesses. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the guests arrived. Elegant women wearing expensive jewelry, discussing charity events and international travel. Helena was radiant, showing off the house as if it were his own palace. During the cocktail party, one of her friends, Mrs. Anderson, commented, "Helena, the children are so quiet today. Where is that wonderful nanny you said you found?" "Christine is keeping them busy with educational activities," Helena replied proudly. "She has implemented admirable discipline." It was then that Conceição made his first strategic move. She purposely left the kitchen door ajar and began to prepare a special snack for the children, animal-shaped cookies that always excited them. The sweet smell spread throughout the house. As expected, the triplets smelled the aroma and came down to the kitchen, disobeying Christine's orders. "Aunt Conceição!" Sophie shouted, running to hug her legs. "I missed you." "We missed you too," Peter and Lucas said in unison. Christine appeared seconds later, furious. "You were forbidden to leave your room. Go back immediately." "But Aunt Conceição made cookies," Lucas explained innocently. "I don't care. His maid has no authority to feed you outside of meal times." Christine's words echoed loudly enough to reach the dining room. Mrs. Anderson, who had heard everything, whispered to her friend next to her, "What a strange way to talk about a child wanting cookies." Helena realized something was wrong and walked to the kitchen. She found Christine holding Lucas by the arm harder than necessary, while the boy cried, "Christine, what's going on?" The children disobeyed and came after the maid. "I'm correcting their behavior." Conceição approached calmly. "Mrs. Whitman, may I take the cookies to the children's room? That way they'll be quiet and won't bother her guests." The suggestion was perfect. It solved the immediate problem without creating conflict. But Christine, blinded by her own arrogance, refused. "Absolutely not. They eat when I allow them to." The maid returned to his duties. The contempt in Christine's voice when she said maid was so evident that even the children noticed. Conceição pretended to accept, but her hands discreetly found her cell phone in her apron pocket. At that moment, Mrs. Anderson appeared at the kitchen door. "Helena, is the cook being scolded for making cookies for the children?" The innocent question created instant awkwardness. Helena realized that the situation had gotten out of hand. "It's a misunderstanding, Diane," Helena tried to explain. "Christine just keeps the routines organized." "What routine prevents a 4-year-old from eating a cookie?" Mrs. Anderson asked, genuinely confused. Christine, unable to admit he was wrong, doubled down. "Children from distinguished families need to learn that they can't do whatever they want whenever they want. That's basic education." Conceição watched every word, every expression, every reaction. Margaret was right, you just had to give prejudiced people enough rope to hang themselves. That night, after the visitors had left and the house was quiet, Conceição reviewed the recordings in his room. She had enough material to prove a pattern of abusive treatment of the children and systematic discrimination against her. But something more powerful was forming in her mind. A plan that would not only protect her, but turn the whole situation into a lesson Helena Whitman would never forget. What neither of the two privileged women realized was that Conceição wasn't just documenting, she was building a case. And when women who have spent their lives being underestimated finally decide to take action, they rarely settle for small victories. While Christine slept peacefully, thinking she had established her dominance, and Helena planned how to get rid of Conceição for good, the cook she considered insignificant was about to rewrite the rules of the game in a way that would turn the Beverly Hills house into a stage of justice that no amount of money or prejudice could control. The Beverly Hills Ladies League's annual charity dinner would be the perfect stage. Helena had invited 40 of the city's most influential women to her mansion, including 2 social journalists, a city councilwoman, and the president of the Los Angeles Child Protection Association. Conceição heard about the party through Margaret and immediately understood that fate had handed her a golden opportunity. For 3 weeks, she feigned total submission while secretly coordinating every detail of her revenge. "Margaret, are you sure her friend from the press will come?" Conceição asked 2 days before the event. Linda Williams never misses one of Helena's parties. And she loves a juicy story about the hypocrisy of the elite. On the morning of the party, Helena inspected every detail of the house like a general preparing for battle. "Conceição, I want everything perfect today. And keep the children completely out of sight. Christine will make sure they don't show up, even by accident." "Yes, sir," Conceição replied humbly. What Helena didn't see was the almost imperceptible smile that flashed in the cook's eyes. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the elegant guests began to arrive. Helena was radiant, showing off Christine as his personal trophy. "I finally found an educator worthy of my granddaughters. European training, proven methods, exemplary discipline." "How did you manage to control those terrible children?" asked Mrs. Davidson, the mayor's wife. "Strict structure and clear authority," Christine replied arrogantly. "Children need to know who's in charge." Conceição circulated discreetly, serving canapés, his cell phone strategically positioned in his uniform pocket, recording every conversation. But the real show was yet to begin. At 8:30, during the main dinner, Conceição made his first move. She had prepared a spectacular meal, but deliberately left out the special sauce for the main course. "Oh no," she muttered loudly enough for Helena to hear. "I forgot to finish the béarnaise sauce." "What do you mean you forgot?" Helena hissed furiously. "I can improvise quickly, but I'll need the children's help. She knows how to separate the herbs I need." "Absolutely not. The children stay in their room." "Then dinner will be without the main sauce," Conceição said calmly. Helena was cornered. With 40 important guests, she couldn't serve an incomplete dinner. "Christine, quickly bring the children to help and then take them back." Christine came down with the triplets 15 minutes later. The children were pale, clearly tense, moving like programmed robots. The transformation was shocking, from happy, spontaneous children to frightened little soldiers. "They're just going to help separate the spices and then go back to their room," Christine announced to the room. That's when Linda Williams, an investigative journalist, first took notice. There was something disturbing about that scene. Conceição called the children into the kitchen and, away from the eyes of the guests, whispered, "Now you're going to do exactly what he rehearsed with you, okay?" The triplets nodded. Over the past few days, Conceição had carefully prepared this performance. They returned to the room carrying small bowls of herbs. But instead of handing them to Conceição and leaving quietly, Lucas accidentally tripped in front of Christine, knocking over her bowl. "You clumsy kid." Christine exploded, grabbing the boy's arm with excessive force. "How many times do I have to tell you to be careful?" The silence in the room was absolute. 40 women watched an adult yell at a 4-year-old who had had an accident. "Christine!" Helena tried to intervene, realizing that something was getting out of hand. "He did it on purpose. These kids are wild and need to learn." Christine continued, shaking Lucas by the arm. Linda Williams stood up discreetly and began filming with her cell phone. It was then that Sophie, following Conceição's script, innocently asked, "Why does he always say that black children are harder to educate than white children?" Christine's jaw dropped. In the room, women began to exchange shocked glances. "I never said that," Christine stammered. "Yes, you did," Peter added. "Yesterday you told Grandma Helena that Aunt Conceição had spoiled us because black maids don't know how to raise children from wealthy families." The bomb had exploded. 40 witnesses had just heard 2 4-year-olds report racist comments from their nanny and possibly from Helena herself. This is a terrible misunderstanding, Helena tried to explain, but her voice trembled. No, it's not, Sophie continued, with the brutal honesty of children. You said that too, Grandma. You said that Aunt Conceição can't teach us things because she's a black maid her. Linda Williams kept recording. Mrs. Davidson, the mayor's wife, was visibly disgusted. The president of the Child Protection Association furiously took notes in his notebook. Conceição calmly appeared at the entrance to the room. Can I show you something, ladies? She connected his cell phone to the 80-inch television in the room and began playing the recordings she had collected. The first showed Christine yelling at Lucas, "Stop crying like a girl. A boy of her social standing can't be so weak." The second recording was even worse. Helena talking to Christine about keeping the black maid away from the children so she doesn't influence them with inappropriate values. The third recording destroyed any chance of denial. Christine explaining to Helena how lower-class people lacked the intellectual capacity to educate elite children. The silence in the room was deadly. Linda Williams had recorded everything: the shocked reactions, Helena's desperate attempts to turn off the television, Christine's growing despair. Ladies, Conceição said calmly, for 3 months I have documented systematic abuse against these children and racial discrimination against me. Everything you have seen here will be handed over to the appropriate authorities tomorrow morning. Helen trembled. Christine was white as a sheet. Conceição, this is a terrible misunderstanding, Helena tried to argue. The only misunderstanding, Mrs. Helena, was that you thought a 52-year-old black woman would get this far without learning to defend herself. The power had completely shifted hands. And Helena Whitman, for the first time in her life, discovered what it was like to be the vulnerable person in the room. 3 months after the night that became known as the Beverly Hills scandal, life had changed dramatically for everyone involved. Linda Williams published the full report with all the recordings. The headline "Racism and Child Abuse Among the Elite of Los Angeles" went viral nationwide. Christine Morrison was deported back to England after losing her work visa. Helena Whitman became a social outcast, expelled from the club, shunned by his former friends, isolated by the very community that once revered him. Conceição, on the other hand, flourished spectacularly. Raphael not only kept her on as the official caregiver for the Triplets, but also offered to pay for her teaching degree. You have proven that true education comes from the heart, not from expensive diplomas. The story also went viral in a positive way. Conceição received dozens of offers to write books on early childhood education, participate in television programs, and consult for families. But she chose something bigger. She opened a community school in downtown Los Angeles, focused on low-income children. The Triplets, now 8 years old, study at Conceição's school and are examples of empathy and respect. Sophie wants to be a pediatrician, Peter dreams of building low-income housing, and Lucas writes stories about overcoming adversity. Helena, now living in a modest apartment after losing her mansion in court proceedings, had to accept volunteer work at Conceição's school to fulfill her court-ordered community service hours, as directed by the tribunal. Ironic, isn't it? Conceição commented one day, watching Helena serve soup to needy children. Sometimes life teaches humility in ways we never expect. Helena lowered her eyes, finally understanding the lesson. You have always been a better person than I deserved to know. Raphael married Conceição 2 years later. During his wedding speech, he said, Conceição taught her that family is built on love and respect, not surnames and bank accounts. Conceição Washington proved that true education does not come from diplomas hanging on the wall, but from the ability to transform pain into growth, prejudice into opportunity, and injustice into a driving force for real change. Sometimes the most powerful people are those whom others underestimate. And when these people decide to show his worth, he rewrites all the rules of the game. If this story of overcoming adversity touched his heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Do you believe Conceição made the right choice by documenting everything before taking action? We would love to hear her opinion on how to face prejudice with intelligence rather than anger.